Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you and thank you for coming today, both here and in West LA, our friends in West LA. Hello. Some waving going on. My name is Alex Russa, and I am the Director of Research and Sponsored Programs here at Pepperdine. It is the great pleasure of our office to host a presentation today by Athena Misson-Foulé from the Council of International Exchange of Scholars, the administrators of the Fulbright program for university college faculty and professionals, and a division of the Institute for International Education. Ms. Foulé currently holds the promoted title of Manager for Outreach and Communications at the Institute of International Education. She received her BA in European Studies with emphasis in art, philosophy, and music from Loyola Marymount University, and her Master's of Arts in Liberal Studies with a focus in religious studies and international affairs from Georgetown. She has served as an educator with the U.S. Peace Corps in Uzbekistan from 1999 to 2001, where her responsibilities included developing and implementing English language curriculum, teacher training, and collaborating with local governments to organize summer camps for urban youth groups and local artisans. She joined CIES in 2003 to work on Fulbright scholar programs, and having lived in Europe, Southeast and Central Asia, Athena has worked in various capacities that have focused on international education and community service. Please join me today in welcoming Ms. Foulé.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you also to the Office of Sponsored Programs. I'm really happy that we were able to include this visit. I don't know the last time we were at Pepperdine, and being right down the street from LMU, I'm glad that we were able to visit and see so much interest generated on this campus. I would like to start the presentation by showing you a video that was created. It's one thing for somebody in a suit from Washington, D.C. to come along and tell you about different programs and opportunities available for you. We've learned very early on that the message and the best ambassadors for a program tends to be our alums. So with that, let me pull up a presentation that was prepared, and just to give everyone a little bit of context of the program and what it represents.
The Fulbright experience was really a watershed moment for me. The experience changes you so much that you're actually moved to want to do more things.
You are yourself, but you do represent, and people see you as the United States.
And there's a certain aspect that you cannot get from reading National Geographic or looking at Twitter. You need to go.
If it's really about changing the world, then what better way than an entire family goes?
Over 60 years ago, as a divided world emerged from war, U.S. Senator J. William Fulbright of Arkansas introduced ambitious legislation aimed to increase mutual understanding between people of the United States and other countries. He believed that international educational exchange could be a powerful step towards building peace, and he convinced the U.S. Congress to use the sale of surplus war materials to fund the first scholarships. In 1946, U.S. President Harry Truman signed the law creating the Fulbright program. 6 decades and 300,000 participants later, this prestigious program, sponsored by the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, provides thousands of grants annually and operates in over 155 countries worldwide. Primary funding comes from the U.S. Congress with support from many participating governments and institutions. Academics and other professionals apply to the Fulbright program to study, research, and live abroad. They typically stay for a semester or a year and immerse themselves in the culture of their host country. They meet the real people, live within the economy, and bring something of great value home. Nancy Oretskin, a lawyer and professor at New Mexico State University, wanted to go to Israel to enhance her work in mediating water disputes.
Fulbright encourages you to go somewhere and study something you haven't done and bring something that you know to that place and bring something back. So I started with the application.
She also wanted to take her children.
This was the second sabbatical, and now I was a single mom, and wanted to include my kids because I knew how important international awareness is in their everyday life.
Muriel Husboon, Associate Professor and Associate Chair of Photography at the Corcoran College of Art and Design, also took her family when she went on her Fulbright grant to El Salvador.
I really wanted my son, Daniel, to have the experience of being there for longer than, 1 or 2 weeks. I had spoken with him in Spanish since he was a little boy, but we had never been in El Salvador for a long period of time. It was a huge growth experience for him. And the wonderful thing was that my husband was able to go as well because he works for NAFSA, which is an international education nonprofit. And so, of course, Fulbright is one of the things that they also promote. And so it was great. He could telecommute.
John Sagi, now a business professor at Anne Arundel Community College, was not just starting out when he inquired about a Fulbright.
I'm on my third career. I'm not an academic by trade for 30 years and so forth. I was a naval officer and I worked in a Fortune 500 company managing information technology.
Dr. Sagi went to teach e-commerce and business in Kazan, Russia. Brian Psycho was a senior vice president and professor of theater arts and drama at Eureka College when he applied for a Fulbright grant to Taiwan.
When I was looking at the programs, actually, Taiwan had an opening for someone who was in one of a variety of different areas. And it just talked about American culture, and I kind of thought theater certainly can do that. And it was to be connected to the America Center that was at the university there.
Everett Penn, Associate Professor and Division Chair Human Sciences at the University of Houston Clear Lake, had a growing interest in minority populations within the criminal justice system.
I would then become very interested after working 1 year at the DC Public Defender's Office in moving past simply criminal justice as a whole, but understanding criminal justice a little bit deeper, specifically the question of African American male incarceration. As a Fulbright scholar, I was attached to the Cairo University's Faculty of Law.
I was assigned or asked to teach one graduate level course in electronic commerce. I had probably 60 students. I also taught local Kazan business owners American business systems and techniques and methods.
I was invited to teach a course in graduate theater management. I was more than happy to do that, but that was considered extra. And I went through a whole elaborate process where I sent in materials and they actually made me a full professor there, which in the Chinese culture is really big.
My project was kind of a combination of an exhibition as well as workshops and research. There was an exhibition of my work, and the work was kind of the backdrop of all of these things that would happen with people in the community. And I set up these 5-day workshops for people to come into and bring their own family photos, share them with everybody, and we would tell stories about these pictures and about their own lives. My work is about memory, it's about cultural identity. It began as a way for me to explore my own sense of identity, and now it has grown into more of a collaborative, interactive way of exploring what identity might mean.
Each year, more than 1,200 U.S. scholars return from their Fulbright experience full of new energy and new ideas. They share their expanded cultural awareness with thousands of U.S. college students across America.
Every year, I have taken students back to Egypt. From that experience, there have been so many interesting changes of life that have occurred. Students, for example, now have changed their career path to foreign service. I've had people start nonprofits. I've even had one of my students, she now leads a group herself over to Egypt.
Certainly, I think that the whole idea of exchange is, it's central to the Fulbright, and it was central to my own experience. I took students back to El Salvador and had an exhibition of their work here in Washington, D.C. at the Corcoran. So there's like many roads that go back and forth now, and that's just part of what Fulbright does.
Fulbright to me is about getting to know the heart and soul of another culture, of other people. It's more specific than other culture, other people, and to see how they have the same worries, concerns, and dreams in many ways that we have.
As the world faces new uncertainties and challenges, Fulbrighters continue to fulfill Senator J. William Fulbright's goal to build strong and lasting cultural bridges. They learn a lot about themselves as well.
I didn't feel qualified. I felt very apprehensive. I thought it was a shot in the dark, but it wasn't.
And I did it. And I'm from Eureka, Illinois. So you can do it. It can happen. You can survive and thrive. More than survive, you can really thrive in it.
We changed 100% in every aspect of our life. My kids give presentations on Fulbright in their schools, in a high school, in a college. And I probably am going to guess they'll apply for Fulbrights in the future.
Meeting all these people who shared their stories with me was just not just moving, but it was incredibly life-changing.
I knew the people were going to be friendly. I just didn't know how friendly they were going to be.
Join the faculty, professionals, and artists who have taken part in the Fulbright experience. Visit www.iie.org/CIES for more information and application deadlines.
A copy of that is also going to be on the flash drives. I hope all of you were able to pick one up on your way in. Otherwise, I think there are still some over there. My business card is also over there, so if I happen to miss you as you were walking in, please be sure to pick that up as well. And I'm happy to turn the floor over to a Fulbright recipient that you have amongst yourselves here. Would you like to share any information? Actually, we have two in the room. One was through the Fulbright Student Program, but we definitely have one who was a Fulbright scholar to Japan. Would you like to say a few words, introduce yourself? And can we have a microphone so that the West LA campus can also hear what you have to say? Thank you.
Thanks, Athena. I'm Mary Mullins. I think I've met almost everyone in this room. I'm the chair of the Humanities and Teacher Education Division, and I was a Fulbright scholar to Japan in 1995-1996, and I taught at two Japanese universities, Tokyo Joshidai and Tokyo Gakugei. Joshidai is a private women's Christian college in the Joshidai area of Tokyo. I taught American literature and culture there. Tokyo Gakugei is a co-ed teacher college on the fringes of Tokyo, and my husband and I, we didn't have any children yet, but we lived in Tokyo. We actually lived in Yokohama that year. And the nice thing, there are many wonderful things about the Fulbright, aside from the teaching experience and interacting with colleagues at these two universities. But really being immersed in the culture and traveling all over Japan were some of the most memorable times for us. We got to see parts of Japan that I don't think many Americans get to see. We went up to northern Japan. We went to Hiroshima. We went to Nagasaki. We felt like as Americans we should go to those two places. But getting to know the Japanese people and living in a Japanese house in Yokohama and having all of those cultural experiences was really beyond compare. So I would encourage all of you to think about going. And as you could see from the video, Fulbright is very family friendly. They're very supportive of you bringing your family with you when you go overseas. So I'd be happy to talk to any of you if you have any questions.
Great, thank you. And this slide was prepared just to give you another sense of who else here has participated through the program over the years. It's quite a strong tradition within the program, so congratulations on that end. So the presentation that I'm about to give basically falls under these 4 categories. It's a lot of information. No one's expected to remember all of it. So please feel free to always reference the website, any of my contact information. The program staff at CIS are here definitely to help candidates through this, and we'll take it from there. This is a picture of Senator Fulbright. He was the junior senator from Arkansas when he proposed the legislation to create this flagship academic exchange program for the U.S. government. Senator Fulbright was previously the youngest college president in American history. He was 28 when he was president of the University of Arkansas, from which he joined the House and eventually the Senate. And as the video pointed out, it was borderline pork barrel legislation that he got away with when he created this program. The United States had surplus ammunition and supplies left in Europe, so instead of having the government incur the cost of sending that back to the United States, he allowed those countries to keep them, and he just turned them into educational credits. So in doing so, that was the birth of this hugely successful exchange program. It was established in 1946 after World War II, and the primary focus, again, of the Fulbright Scholar Program is to send U.S. academics and professionals overseas, as well as a counterpart program to bring visiting scholars and professionals to the United States. It's sponsored by U.S. taxpayer dollars and through appropriation annually through the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. And it's been administered by the Institute of International Education since its inception. The Fulbright Student Program has always been administered through IIE, and the Scholar Program through CIES, which is a nonprofit organization that employs me, and was basically created to ensure that the review process for Fulbright applicants would remain completely removed from the political realm. Being congressionally appropriated, you can imagine there would be some tendencies or possibilities to somehow give grants to people from senators' regions that are sitting on the Appropriations Committee. So to avoid that, CIS was created for peer review. Actually, and this is a little bit more information I can share. We just recently have been starting the process of conducting a longitudinal study of the impact of the Fulbright Scholar Program in American academia. 60 some odd years into it, 300,000 participants in the program. That's a lot of multiplier effects to sort of manage and take note of. But we did discover that since 1946, 64 years of the program, since the inception of the program with 300,000 participants, both U.S. scholars going out and visiting scholars and students and teachers participating. The total budget appropriation for the U.S. taxpayer from 1946 to today equals a total of 3 days of the current defense budget. So that'll give you a sense of, are you sleeping better at night because of 3 days of the defense budget, or that 300,000 people have participated in these exchanges? I will leave that for your consideration. So why consider a Fulbright? Well, you're all here, so you must have your own reasons. Our colleagues refer to this as the slide that you would need to take up with your chair or dean as to why it's a good idea for you to be off campus to do such a great experience. One is to share your knowledge with a community outside of your own. Many of you may have been at this institution for a while now. You all know each other's stories. This will give you a chance to share it with a wider audience. Gain new teaching insights, discover new research directions. Many of our Fulbrighters tell us there was their research focused before they went on their Fulbright, and then how it completely changed when they came back from it. So lots to explore in that end. Understand the global context of your discipline. Mathematics is not taught the same way in Russia as it would be here in the United States. So broadening that scope of comprehension is important. As you saw in the video, you establish long-term professional relationships. Many people continue to develop exchange programs with some of their colleagues overseas, and that does not stop once you return to your campus. It allows you to bring your family to experience a completely different culture. And increasingly with a Secretary of State who has ties to the Arkansas legacy and a president who in many ways comes from academia, the Department of State is really looking at the Fulbright program as a major arm as far as soft power and citizen-to-citizen diplomacy is concerned. So we're really looking at the growth of this program in terms of sharing American culture and education at a very high level. Basic eligibility requirements for U.S. citizens interested in going overseas. U.S. citizenship is a requirement. Since it is taxpayer funded, that is one of the stipulations of the grant. A PhD or the equivalent in your professional field. For professionals and artists outside of academia, they're looking at substantial accomplishments. That's basically, we interpret that to be a minimum of 5 to 10 years of experience. Teaching experience, if required by the award, we'll be visiting the catalog of awards shortly so that you can see the outline of what our basic grant description looks like. And about 3 years ago, limits were now have been put in place for Fulbright Scholar grantees. You're now allowed up to 2 per lifetime. And I'll be also going into more detail about that shortly. Language requirements. Some of you may be happy to know that English is actually sufficient for most of our awards. Most of our awards are teaching awards, and everywhere in the world they expect American instructors to be teaching in American English. The exceptions to that is if you plan to do any research, you're going to need to be able to prove in your application that your language is sufficient enough for the project that you'd like to do. An example that we often use about this is we have scholars wanting to go to Belgium, speaking none of the languages that they speak in Belgium, but happen to speak an archaic form of Latin, and that's what the archives were in. So they were able to demonstrate that they can conduct the research that they needed to do, and were successful in getting their grant. But as far as the teaching awards are concerned, again, English is completely acceptable for most parts of the world. The only exceptions to that would be Latin American countries still require Spanish or Portuguese, and Francophone Africa still generally requires French. As far as those in the fields of American studies, American literature, study of the U.S., those types of courses, you would most likely be able to teach in English. That would be a question for our program staff to clarify and define for you on a case-by-case basis. But those would be essentially the only exceptions. The Scholar Program is in more than 125 countries around the world. Fulbright itself reaches about 155, but that number changes in terms of diplomatic relations with countries we're having. Most of this information is for the 2011-2012 academic year competition, which is now closed. The competition runs annually from February 1 to August 1 for the following academic year. So August 1, 2011 is going to be for fall of 2012. So what do we offer? We offer more than 1,200 grants for faculty, administrators, and professionals. The core program has grants that last from 2 to 12 months. They're really looking for someone who can be away for a semester or 2. And we do have short-term seminars that run 2 to 3 weeks. Our opportunities basically fall under these 4 categories: pure teaching, pure research, a combination of teaching and research, which is the fastest growing type of grant that we offer now, and those 2 to 3 week seminars. So teaching, pure teaching, or a combination of that teaching research, is at roughly 67% of our offerings. Research, pure research is at 26%. The research awards, when I started with Fulbright, my first position with the Fulbright program was in the Europe desk for South and Central Europe. And research was roughly at 18%. So Fulbright is really a classroom exchange teaching grant. But the research component is definitely growing within the program at 26% for that last competition. And seminars stay roughly at 7% year to year. While most of our grants are country-specific, so you would go to one specific country and maybe be affiliated with 1 or 2 institutions, we do have opportunities for research to be done cross borders, pretty much around the world, in most parts of the world. Sub-Saharan Africa, any sort of research that you'd like to do in Africa would need to be supported through the Sub-Saharan Regional Research Award. The only exception to that would be South Africa, which has their own pool of money and funds direct programs themselves. And as you can see, most of these regional awards have shared cultural backgrounds and histories. Middle East, North Africa, South and Central Asia is an emerging market as far as Fulbright is concerned. They're one of the fastest growing regions in our program offerings. For anyone interested in doing anything related to the European Union, this European Union Affairs Award is oftentimes overlooked. And for historians, the Austrian-Hungarian Research Award has opportunities to live in both Austria and Hungary. And specifically for the Western Hemisphere and all of you here at this institution, there is a joint award in North American Studies. If any of your research involves themes that relate to anything regarding the North American continent, a special preference is given to institutions that are in border states. So California would definitely suffice for that. And environmental sciences is also growing in our program, and that Argentina-Uruguay Teaching Research Award has just been added for the coming year. So how to apply for the Fulbright grant? The first place to go is our website, which is iie.org/CIS. Everything is completely online. It took us a while to catch up with the 21st century as far as federal grants were concerned, but instead of publishing that thick, I don't know if some of you are familiar with it, this award catalog that was about an inch wide, sending 50,000 copies of that around the country, we've moved everything to our website. We also have them on flash drives to hopefully make it easier for everybody to transport and reference. We have program overviews, guidelines, FAQs, and tips for applying that have been compiled by our successful candidates, our peer reviewers, as well as staff, so lots of information there. Our deadline, again, is August 1 for the core program. That's every year. And if it falls on a weekend, it'll be the following, August 2nd or August 3rd. Our latest offering as far as technology tech resources is the CIS Fulbright webinars. We have webinars every Wednesday of the year at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The schedule for the coming year is actually being built as we speak, but in addition to having those webinars every Wednesday, a few days later we post the webinar PowerPoint as well as the audio for it, so if you can't make that time, always access that database. It's a wealth of information. The closer you get to August 1, you can imagine it would be close, the themes tend to focus on the application process, preparing the project statement, getting your letters of reference, sort of like a checklist closer to August 1. But up until then, we highlight specific world regions, specific academic disciplines, so definitely look at our webinar offerings. And we've also now started publishing a monthly electronic publication called the Fulbright Scholar News. So if you don't remember anything today, you can always just send us an email and get registered or subscribe to the Fulbright Scholar News. Part of this whole longitudinal study of market data that we've trying to analyze how to reach out to our audience, we've noticed that it takes people 3 to 5 years to apply for a Fulbright grant. So once you start thinking about it, once you start lining up your contacts overseas, once you figure out mortgages and education for dependents and things like that, release time from your campus, it takes everyone for our programs generally 3 to 5 years. In sort of acknowledging that, the Fulbright Scholar News is our way of just sort of staying on your mind. Month after month, you'll be hearing from us on new program offerings and new announcements that are happening around the world. So in selecting award, the first place that we would refer you to is our country listings. Most academics have a sense of what part of the world they would already like to do their work in. If not, you can also search our award catalog by activity. Are you interested in teaching, doing research, or a combination of both? We have award indices at the back of our award catalog or on our website that you can search by your academic discipline or just completely leave open to all discipline searches. 50% of our grants at this point in time are all disciplines. And what all disciplines awards are is a country's way of, instead of saying they specifically want 4 economists, 3 political scientists, and 2 artists, by having an all disciplines award, that is institution's way of saying that they are willing to listen to anybody who can make the most compelling case to be in that country at that given time. So most of our awards are sort of increasingly trying to be that open, and all of that is also searchable through our catalog. Read all award descriptions and stipend information carefully. We cannot stress that enough. Stipends vary greatly from country to country, and sometimes even between awards within a country, so definitely do your homework. And please contact the CIS program officer for any information about the award description, the country. Many of us have lived overseas and taught overseas, so we'd be happy to address any kind of issues you might have about that part of the region or our portfolio. So once you've decided to apply, what does the online application look like? Well, there's an application form. It's 4 pages long, and the toughest question on that is what your congressional district is. As a congressionally funded program, they like us to collect that information on their behalf. We've made it easy for you. We've put a little drop down, so hopefully that'll simplify that process. A project statement, which is the most crucial part of the application. We'll be spending a little bit more time on that shortly. Your CV or resume. If you plan to do any teaching on your grant, course outlines or syllabi will be required. A select bibliography for any of the research that you propose to do. References and teaching report, as to be expected. And depending on the type of award you're applying for, and this will also be spelled out in the catalog of awards, you may be required for that language proficiency report for Latin America and Francophone Africa, or if you're planning to do research. A letter of invitation is required in many parts of the world, but not all. In fact, some parts of the world prefer that you don't include that letter of invitation. And if you're in the arts, architecture, writing, or journalism, some portfolio submissions are also requested of you. So let's say you are interested in going to one of the countries that does require that letter of invitation. The first place that we would refer you to is your international office here on campus. If you have any international students, international scholars already here, they're excellent resources to get contact information of their colleagues back home. We have a complete listing of U.S. and visiting scholar lists online, which is searchable by discipline and country. We'll take a moment to visit the website, and I can show you exactly how to use that. It's a very powerful tool. The international division of your professional organization, you pay membership dues to all of these organizations. Contact your member services department and see who's doing the kind of work that you're doing overseas. That's a great lead. Who's publishing in your field, obviously. The CIS program officer may be able to help. Many of these countries have a sort of institutionalized relationship with many of these campuses that consistently host a U.S. scholar every year. We might have that information for you. And of course, the website. The internet. The BrainTrack website is very useful, and the Library of Congress Portals to the World has a lot of information there too. So in terms of submitting a competitive application, make sure your expertise and your experience match what is being requested from the catalog of awards. This is probably among the most important things to keep in mind. What our reviewers are looking is how your project statement and what you propose to do matches what the host country is being asked. In some cases, it is very specific. In others, it's pretty general. Regardless, make sure that it dovetails nicely to what is being requested. Follow instructions and format precisely. Writing that clear and focused project statement, again, is critical. And focus on what you plan to do, not your biography. You have 5 pages in that project statement to make a case to be in that country for that time. Don't give us the history of cancer while you only have 5 pages to do that. Really focus on what you plan to do when you arrive there. Please be sure to also note that these review committees are multidisciplinary, so whatever you're writing, make sure that people outside your field can understand the value and importance of it. And also increasingly important is by stating the contribution of not only the host institution and what they'll be getting out of your visit to their campus, but what you'll be bringing home after you return to the United States. 3 strong and current reference letters. 1 from your supervisor is required, and if you're doing any sort of teaching, the teaching report or your evaluation will be required as well. 1 from someone who's not at your institution, and 1 from a colleague who knows your work really well. Understand how each part of that application really builds to support your candidacy as a whole. So understand how your CV or your resume is really what the reviewers will be referring to in terms of understanding who you are and your biography. Understand that the reference letters will be talking about your character and seeing how relevant what you plan to do is in the country that you're going to. And how the project statement is really going to talk about the impact that you'll be making. Organize carefully, don't make reviewers search back and forth through the application, and meet all eligibility guidelines and requirements by the application deadline, which again is August 1st, 2012. So the project statement. Consider it a brief introduction to the reviewers. You're basically answering questions briefly that you think a reviewer might have about you. And these 4 facts basically are whoever can make the most compelling case and do this most successfully tend to be our successful candidates. So discuss 1, why you are interested in Fulbright and why in this particular place. You don't need to be sitting at a cafe in Paris to write the next great American novel. So it really needs to be clear why you want to do this now and in that country. What professional experiences and skills do you offer a host institution and host country? So what puts you a cut above the rest? What do you hope to gain from the experience? Discussing the lasting impact on you. There are no Fulbright police who will come after you if you don't fulfill your obligations that you mentioned in the project statement. This is really for our reviewers just to know and get a sense of that you have thought this project through and you have thought about the implications of this experience on your career when you return. And how adaptable are you? How well will you deal with challenging situations? You're no longer going to be speaking to a classroom of American students, so how are you going to adapt your lesson plans or your style of teaching to accommodate that? To do that homework, research host country and institution award particulars. We had this brilliant candidate who wanted to teach mathematics in Nepal, but his syllabi and course outlines were fabulous, but involved smart classroom technology, and there was no way that that would have been able to be facilitated in Nepal. Every year we get somebody who wants to do freedom of press in Venezuela, also not going to be looked kindly upon by our reviewers. So make sure that you sound like you know what you're talking about when you're referring to the specific country you're interested in going to. Again, emphasize why this experience and why this particular place. And for the Teaching and Research Awards, the amount of the attention that you put in those 5 pages should reflect that. Some cases they'll say 80-20, 80 lecturing, 20 research. Other times they'll say 60-40. So just make sure you're careful of representing that as well in your project statement. And again, demonstrating that flexibility and adaptability. So now to discuss parts of the review process and the timetable. What happens once you click submit? Well, the CIS program officers, I will also make a plug here, always feel free to contact us via email, by phone, or people stop by our office sometimes. We cannot legally contribute into the peer review process. We facilitate it, we take notes, and we push papers, but we do not give our opinions either which way about any candidates. So if you're thinking that you're harassing us too much or calling us and it's going to be detrimental to your application, don't. Because we're really here to be a resource and a tool for you to facilitate you through that process. So come August, but once you click submit, we can no longer comment on your application. August is spent in our offices making sure all of your letters are in, all of the eligibility requirements for your awards are met. Come December, a discipline review committee reads all of the applications electronically from the perspective of your academic discipline. It's sent out electronically, and these discipline reviewers will basically write back to us with a 3 to 5 bullet point response in terms of, is this innovative, is this dynamic, is this something interesting in the field right now, giving us a perspective that only somebody in your field would be able to know. From October to December, which is the period that we're in right now, we have peer review committees meeting in Washington, D.C. Who are these people? It's a group of 5 to 7 academics from as many academic disciplines as we can squeeze into 5 to 7 people. We have geographical diversity, gender diversity, institutional diversity. We just want to have as mixed of a pool as possible reading these applications. Their shared experience, however, is the fact that they all have expertise in that world region. So many of them are Fulbrighters, many of them are just experts in their field. So they all come to Washington, D.C., and they rate our candidates from October to December, depending on what part of the world that they're reading. And applicants will then receive notice of their status either as early as November through January, so it makes for a very interesting holiday season, letting them know if they've been recommended or not for further consideration. And again, those letters are going out as we speak. If you are recommended for further consideration, your information is then forwarded to the host country for selection. So what the reviewers in Washington, I explained what the discipline reviewers are looking for. The Washington, D.C. peer reviewers are really looking for a match to the country. Does what this person is proposing to do match what that country has requested in their award descriptions? They're also looking at scholarship, they're looking at your ability to be flexible and all those things that we outlined in those earlier slides. By the time it reaches the host country, what they're really looking for is this a suitable match for this institution? Is this an institution that we've decided to fund this year, or have they received too many Fulbrighters? Is this in step with the Ministry of Education's priorities or goals for this coming year? Should we bring 2 scholars for 1 semester each, or should we bring 1 scholar with his or her whole family for the whole year? Those sort of negotiations take place at the host country selection committee. Who are the people at these host country selections? Now that varies greatly from country to country. Sometimes it's embassy staff, sometimes it's public service leaders, sometimes it's academics, higher ed leaders as well, but that is very mixed. Many times it's Fulbrighters who are currently in that country as well. But that's what they're looking for. They have a set goals of what they would like to see in terms of their selections. All of this information is also available on our website with the criteria outlined. And there is a presidentially appointed J. William Fulbright Scholarship Board who technically has final say as to who receives these awards. This presidentially appointed board is currently in transition right now. So they are basically looking for an American's ability to represent the country overseas. In the 7 years I've been with Fulbright, they've only overturned the decision once from the previous selection committee's selections. And that was because the person had received, I think, 5 Fulbrights at that point, so they were really trying to scale that down. They were also the ones to implement the 2 per lifetime limit. So the letters, depending on what country you've applied to, those letters can go out anywhere from February through May. Grant packets are then sent to selected grantees from May through June, including benefit information, medical clearance, and all of that. And we have people leaving as early as July for language training in some parts of the world. Grant benefits. The package, the absolute minimum grant package includes the first bullet point. A stipend, an in-country living allowance, a maintenance allowance basically, and the travel for just the grantee. That's the absolute minimum. In some countries, there are very generous packages for travel for dependents, dependent schooling, research allowance, and book allowance, if anyone is interested in bringing their family. East Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa tend to be among the most generous, providing full tuition for K through 12 education for up to 4 dependents. So keep those in mind. And again, stipend and benefits do vary considerably from country to country. As you can imagine, some of the more popular countries realize that they don't have to offer that much to lure people wanting to spend time there. So be sure to look all of that up before applying. And all of that is on our website. We have other opportunities for U.S. scholars to go overseas. There's the Fulbright Specialist Program, which are short-term grants. Those are 2 to 6 weeks in duration. It's different than the core program in that to become a Fulbright Specialist, you need to apply to become part of a roster. And this is one of our newer programs. It's only about 10 years old. We have about 5,000 people, probably about closer to 4,000 people on this roster. And as we receive requests from overseas institutions to have guest lecturers and consultants for 2 to 6 weeks, we then do a matchmaking process of everybody on our roster who is suitable for the project that they'd like to do. So it currently supports a little over 20 academic disciplines, and we'll visit the website and I can show you that. It's a completely online application as well. If you have a colleague overseas who would like to invite you, and you're only looking at that 2 to 6 week period, you can apply at the same time. So you would apply to get on the roster, and you would have them contact our office in that country and specifically name request you, and then we can match you up that way as well. It does not support research, since again we're only looking at a 2 to 6 week grant. And so you're on that roster for 5 years. There is no guarantee that you will be called up from that roster. But should you be called up, you are allowed to have up to 2 grants within that period of 5 years. You can always apply to be back on that roster again after your 5 years is up. That said, these limits do apply to Fulbright Scholar grantees as well. So the core program, that 2 to 12 month grants, those grants that we were talking about earlier, those count as a full grant. So that would be 1. If you apply, you can then apply for the specialist roster and get 2 additional grants at 0.5 each, which will cap you off at 2. Or you can get 2 full grant opportunities through the core program. Keep in mind, we've inherited that lifetime limit law. There has been some stirrings in Washington in terms of what the next presidentially appointed board might do. In the meantime, we know that if you are interested in going to Indonesia or Pakistan, neither of those countries' grants will apply to your 2 per lifetime. So also keep that in mind. We have short-term seminars for international education administrators to Japan, Korea, Germany, and now India. India by far is now our largest program. The Japan and Korea programs are smaller in that they take literally a busload or a truckload of 5 to 6 administrators, drive them around the peninsula or the islands, and have them meet with higher ed institutions there, learn a little bit about their culture and their systems so that they can better facilitate exchange programs with Japanese and Korean students on their campus. Germany is much different, actually, because it's a larger group of administrators. A group of 25 go annually, and they're really looking for a nice mix of administrators. They have newly appointed development officers, straight through college presidents, going to Germany to essentially learn about European higher ed systems and the German institutions. The India program is fledgling. It's a start. It's only in its 2nd year. There's 15 administrators who go to India. And India is looking a little bit more like the Germany program, and they're just trying to get a nice mix of administrators to experience India's culture and India's system to better facilitate those exchanges. There are different deadlines for all of those. All of that is outlined on our website. But Asia tends to be in the fall, Germany in the spring. The German Studies Seminar, prior to this last competition where India surpassed Germany in the number of awards offered, Germany is the second largest program. And they have another short-term seminar in the German Studies field in which they take 25 faculty members. The topic varies from year to year. This last year was ethnic diversity in a new Europe. So people who were in that field were invited to apply to participate in a 3-week seminar in which they would explore certain themes that are affecting the European continent now. The topic, as I said, is announced every year, so keep a lookout in May. The topic is usually announced in May if you're looking for short-term opportunities. And German Studies is actually tends to be in the summertime as well. So before I go on to visiting scholars, I'd like to either take some questions and go to our website. Yes? Just give us one moment to catch up with
Also, I
audio.
just want to mention that those of you in West LA will turn up the mic so you can ask your question as well.
Okay, the question relates to the due date. I assume the August 1st due date is a firm deadline?
Yes.
Okay, and then the next question is for the specialist program that's 2 to 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Is one limited to staying only 6 weeks if one qualifies for that program? So if one wanted to go for 6 months but is too late for the core program, can one apply for the 2 to 6 week one, stay those 6 weeks and then stay on, or is there part of, you got to come back and then report something, or?
The specialist program only selects, because since it comes from both directions, the institutions overseas requesting somebody to come, as well as a U.S. scholar interested in going overseas. The office in that country will only fund projects that last those 6 weeks. They won't select projects that would be more than that in duration. But the one thing about the specialist program that is different is that those 6 weeks don't have to be continuous. So it could be a serial grant. You can go 2 weeks in January, 2 weeks in June, 2 weeks in December, whatever it is. But the work itself needs to be able to be completed within those 6 weeks. But no, there's no way of... I'm trying to think if you applied for it and then they were selected again, so like you can maybe cap it off at 12 weeks for 2 grants, but then there would need to be at least a year, I think, in between those. So I don't think that it's not really built to support that, but I'd be happy to give you the contact information of my colleagues. There's nothing saying that you can't get a specialist grant now and then apply for the traditional program, the core program, later. But they're meant to sort of feed into each other rather than supplement one another, if that makes sense. Great.
Do we have Fulbright scholars here from other countries that we've invited?
This institution?
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe so. You know what? We can look, though.
But that would be a good thing for us to have.
I agree. I'll definitely, the next part of the presentation will be focusing primarily on opportunities to bring visiting scholars to your campus, but that's a great segue to showing you where you can find that on our website. In the meantime, I can take another question while I do this.
I'm going to assume that the website has lists of people who've done it the year before and what they've done, but is there a resource, let's say you come up with a project, is there a quick way to check out this has been done or not been done?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll show you that shortly. Let's start with the visiting scholars because that was the first question. Okay, so here it is. A list of visiting scholars by country and by host institution. So let's sort by that. Okay. Let's try this one. Oh, maybe it's because I didn't save it. Well, it's an Excel document that you can sort by where they are coming from, where they're going as far as what institution in the United States they're coming to. And it even gives you the faculty associate name. We can't provide any contact information, but all of that is here, and the grant start and end date. So these are the people who are, that's so strange. I usually am able to pull it up by, well, that was available again from our website. I'll show you again. It's from CIS.org. Hello. by just going here to the scholar list. And you have the visiting scholars accessible there. The US is a much more fluid reporting system. You can check by academic discipline. I just pulled up the 2010-2011 grantees. So does anyone have a particular discipline that they'd like to look up? Let's go film studies. So these are the people who are current recipients for this academic year in the field of film studies. We have 3. 2 to Brazil, and 1 to Spain. If you'd like to go back, you can also pull up a list by home state, so you can see who's out and about from the state of California. Connection's a little slow. Were there any questions from West LA?
West
Yes.
LA, any questions?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. What if you don't have a contact in the country that you're interested in?
The first step would be to figure out if that country requires the letter or not. Sometimes many countries don't require that. So that would be the first step. Second, if you don't, the recommendations that we have is start with the international office here on your campus, check with the professional organizations that you pay your membership dues to and see who's doing the kind of work that you're doing overseas. You can always contact our program staff to see if they have any recommendations. Or this is also great because you can look to see who from the state of California is on the road right now. And you can look them up by home institution here. Does Pepperdine have anyone on the road right now? No. Okay. So okay. You can, oh gosh. You can also look them up by host geographic area. This is also a great resource because these people are currently over there now. So let's say you are interested in going to Croatia and you don't have a contact in Croatia. Without visiting the catalog of awards, I can't speak to if you need one there or not, but all of these people are in Croatia right now. So either you're in the field of geography or you're not. Leo Zahn. This person is affiliated at the University of Zagreb and is there right now, just got there, and is from UT Austin. So whether or not, again, you're in geography, but let's say you are interested in forming a connection, this professor might know the right department person that you need to speak to at the University of Zagreb because they're there right now. Most of our Fulbright scholars are very happy to put you in contact with anybody and everybody they meet, just to sort of perpetuate the Fulbright exchanges. Another way to do that is if you visited the scholar directories from the visiting scholars, you could look to see who's in town or who's in the country from that specific country. So in this case, if you want to go to Argentina, these are all the people who are in Argentina. There's one at Harvard, Maryland, NYU, Stanford, some of the UCs, LA and Davis. They're also excellent resources. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Great. Any others? So let me, now that I showed you where the catalog of awards are, I'd like to also show you where this presentation is if you'd like to refer to it. I mean, the scholars, sorry, I'm backpedaling here. Okay, so from CIS.org, this is where the webinars are. That's the video that we saw. All of the deadlines are listed right here. For the core program, August 1. Rolling deadline for the specialist program, if I didn't mention that, actually, the specialist program has 8 reviews a year, so they're always in competition at some point, so you can always apply to that. Chairs, German Studies. We just produced an article in the Chronicle of Higher Ed with top producing institutions. We're celebrating the success of our Nobel laureates. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, so if you want to hear from us more often than once a month, you can always check us out on Twitter. We do that about twice a day. If you're going to any professional conferences and wanted to check in on where we would be or speak to somebody directly yourselves, if you're not in Washington, D.C. or can't do that, I clicked the wrong link. You can check our calendar of events. Here. If it's an academic conference, most likely we will be there. And going back to the home page, other useful information, contact us link. Oops, wrong one again. All of our contact information is listed by U.S. program staff by specific country that we work with. So you can access all of that here. Our phone number, email address, titles, and specific country programs that we work with. Okay. Was there anything else somebody wanted to look at on our website? That's just sort of the nuts and bolts of it. Yes?
I'd be interested in seeing the catalog of awards and
Sure,
running
yes.
a search on a...
Yep, we're going to do that right now. So there are a couple of ways you can access the catalog of awards. One, it's on the flash drive. Two, from our homepage, go to U.S. Scholars, learn more about the core program, and the catalog of awards is right there. Eligibility information, the review criteria, as I discussed from the peer reviewers. Did we have a question at West LA? Sorry?
Actually, yeah, I was just hoping that those flash drives, we could get a couple for the attendees here at West LA if there's any extras.
Right, absolutely. I will send those along.
Thank you.
Thanks for the reminder. Great. And actually, we do have a supply here, but you could also do that here at the request information link. So we do that there. So review catalog of awards. So you can click catalog awards. I've already opened it here. So this is what it looks like. You can do a search by world area. So if you're just sort of open to countries within a specific region, you can do that. If you have a specific country that you're already pretty convinced that you'd like to do your work in, you can do that. The kinds of programs, if you're interested in teaching, research, both, or seminar, your academic discipline, PhD required or not, and a keyword search. Those are also very helpful. Does anybody want to volunteer that we look something up? Anyone interested? Mozambique. So looks like Mozambique offers one or possibly more teaching or teaching research awards through the African Regional Research Program. Teaching or teaching research, but if you're interested in doing the peer research award, it would be through the Sub-Saharan African Regional Research Program that we discussed. Scholars need to have a PhD with 5 years of postdoc, university or college teaching experience. So the catalog of awards will always start with a brief country overview, just giving you a layout of what the program is like in that country. A letter of invitation from the host institution is recommended but not required. As far as Mozambique is concerned, academic calendar has 2 semesters, February to June, August to December, and the American International School is available for children K through 12 who accompany you. Contact information for the program staff. Your stipend information. So there's base stipend. In addition to that, there's a maintenance allowance, travel relocation, as well as an allowance for dependents, tuition reimbursement, another $1,000 for educational materials, and that's that. This is actually a very good example. Let me explain why. So it says 1 or more teaching or teaching research awards. So why then do they have all of these opportunities listed? A country is able to fund a certain number of awards, and that is what they've discussed in the country program. So Mozambique has told us that they're only going to fund one or more. So at least that means they've guaranteed funding for at least 1 scholar, but they are open to funding, if there are strong enough candidates in these fields, they're opening to funding this many, if that makes sense. So Are you interested in any of these particular, or should we go to the All Disciplines Award? Okay. So it'll start again with the background of the country. And here's the award information, Award 1038. It's teaching or teaching research, so that tells you immediately if you are interested in doing research. It is not supported through this grant. PhD is required. Activity is to teach undergraduate. Can everyone see that? Should I make it bigger? Okay. Teaching undergraduate and graduate courses at Eduardo Mondlane University. Assistant tutorials, teaching, thesis advising, curriculum development, and you conduct your research in the area of specialization. So that's pretty broad. That's basically saying, tell us what you'd like to do and we'd be happy to work with you on that. Teaching is in English, in American literature, or English as a foreign language. Portuguese proficiency is needed for interaction, but fluent Portuguese is required for teaching in all other disciplines. So that's the case of that. Mozambique, I think, is the only other country. So we should probably add Luso Africa to the presentation, because that is the case as far as other disciplines being taught in that country. It's an 11-month grant as well, so that's outlined right here. If you're only interested in going for 4 to 9 months, keep in mind this was not going to be the grant that you'll want to apply for. It's spelled out right there that they really want someone there for 11 months, starting in February 2012. And also, since they also tell you where it's going to be affiliated is, if you have contacts at another university, this also would not be the award you'd like to apply for. Any other country? Yes.
I was going to ask a different question.
Sure.
So does the university pay your salary in addition to the stipend? Who covers your freight?
That's an institutional question.
So what is the pattern at Pepperdine?
I would have to refer you to your academic affairs, faculty development, sponsored programs office. I can tell you what other campuses do. The Fulbright stipend is a grant specifically to the individual. Some campuses, I can give you an example from yesterday. I was at the University of Laverne, and when I was speaking with the Dean of College of Arts and Sciences, he said, well, that stipend isn't going to be enough for our faculty member to be away, so if somebody successfully receives a Fulbright, we'll automatically give them interim sabbatical. Interim sabbatical? 50%. But that'll vary from institution to institution. An example I gave earlier at lunch today was this tiny liberal arts college in Albion, Michigan. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but it's Albion College. They were so excited that they had a Fulbrighter at their institution that they said, chances are getting a Fulbright would have been harder than getting a sabbatical, so they automatically gave her one, just sort of kicked in the process. I do encourage institutions to take a look at the policies. There are a lot of, the devil is in the details in terms of what you're able to fund when you're not physically on campus, but that's definitely a campus-to-campus based response. I don't know exactly what Pepperdine is able to offer. Actually, that would have been a wonderful question for the alumna who was here earlier. I'm sure there are cases of, oh, right.
We can work on finding out for you. I think it probably is a conversation with the dean of each school, but we'll find out. We can.
And in some cases, in terms of, I can give other examples as well. The Appalachian State University, they maintain the faculty on payroll so that the faculty member is able to take benefits, health insurance, and all of that. And then they have a contract that the faculty member would then just remit the grant stipend back to the institution for contingent faculty and whatever is necessary. That's also something we recommend, topping off the grant as well, and then the university can maintain the rest of the faculty salary. That can actually save an institution money, depending on what top salary is for faculty. And so lots of different variations of that. That's really, our grants, again, are directly to the individual, so we try to stay clear of all of that. That can get really detailed, specific. So, was there anything else from West LA before I continue on to? No? Okay. So would anybody else like to see something in the catalog of awards? It's pretty, we try to make it as user-friendly as possible. Okay, great. So then let's talk about opportunities to bring visiting scholars to your campus. I always do that. The Visiting Scholar program has several components, and it's an excellent opportunity to quickly internationalize your internationalize your campus with little to no cost to your institution. The core Fulbright Visiting Scholar program is essentially the counterpart of the U.S. Scholar program going overseas. The difference with the Visiting Scholar program, however, is while most that's 67% of U.S. scholars going overseas are doing teaching or a combination of teaching research, visiting scholars coming to the United States are primarily here to do research. So they're affiliated with large research institutions most of the time. But just as you would apply to our offices in Washington, D.C., any of your colleagues interested in coming to the United States through the Visiting Scholar program need to apply at the Fulbright office in their country. And as you would also in many cases require a letter of invitation, visiting scholars wanting to come to the United States also may require a letter of invitation. So if you're interested in hosting that, we have 800 grantees every year looking for a place to be. And Malibu is not that bad of an assignment, if you ask me. The Occasional Lecturer Fund. So this is what I would say the quickest and easiest way to become involved in Fulbright, like right off the bat. So we saw that Excel spreadsheet of over 800 visiting scholars from the traditional core program who are here in the United States doing research. The Occasional Lecturer Fund was created for them to get out of the libraries and out of the laboratories into the classroom. So we provide funding for them to visit any institution in the United States for 2 to 6 days. It'll give them an opportunity to talk about their research topic, give them an opportunity to talk about their country. The University of Georgia, this is my favorite example, invited all of the Georgians one time to their institution. The University of Del Este in Puerto Rico invites somebody to their campus practically every quarter, just nonstop inviting. There are no limits to how many visiting scholars you can host through the Occasional Lecturer Fund. There are limits to how many a scholar can receive. So if the preeminent scholar in the field of chemistry is in the United States and a Fulbright, chances are somebody may have already invited him or her. That said, being a federally funded program, there are always ways around it, and if you add a visit to another smaller institution, we would allow them to accept another grant. The travel support that we provide is $750, depending on how far they're traveling, so that should cover their airfare. We do ask if you can show them some home hospitality, pick them up from the airport. Those sort of gifts in kind are appreciated. Because again, this is an opportunity for these visiting scholars to really engage the community outside of their own and understand like there's more to United States higher ed than University of California, Berkeley, and Harvard and UT Austin. So keep that in mind. I'm sure you will have no problem inviting somebody to your campus if you're interested in doing so. It was that Excel spreadsheet. So no, you can look them up by academic discipline. The Azusa Pacific University, no, that's wrong. Alaska Pacific University in Anchorage, when I was up there recently, they said, oh, perfect, we're having an interfaith symposium. Let's have somebody in from Indonesia, Pakistan, and Israel. Like they weren't necessarily in the field of interfaith dialogue or anything like that, but they were just there as a resource to talk about being a citizen of that country. And I actually haven't heard back from them, so I don't know how it went, but it's a completely open slate on how to use this, and these visiting scholars are really excited to be talking to somebody outside of the current research that they're doing. Should you be interested in bringing somebody to the United States for more long-term lecturing, we have the Scholar in Residence program. So this would probably be a closer equivalent to what we do in the U.S. Scholar program. This would allow visiting faculty to come to the United States and actually teach a semester or two. This bullet point involves colleges and universities that serve student populations underrepresented in international exchange programs. That's Washington, D.C. language for you. That is basically them saying that we want departments that don't have anybody international teaching at them or any sort of international component or any sort of international module to have the opportunity to host a visiting scholar. The application is made by the institution. It's a little bit more in-depth. Oh, by the way, the Occasional Lecturer Fund, this is International Education Week, so this is the week that everybody is basically on the road. We just need 6 weeks lead time, so you have access to that Excel spreadsheet now. Just give us 6 weeks lead time. You're able to, if you have a name in mind, looking at that Excel spreadsheet, you can always run it by us to see if they're a good fit, or you can just tell us what you need, and then we can do a matchmaking process accordingly. It's a one-page application, and again, there's little to nothing that you need to contribute in terms of what you need to do to have them over. Scholar in Residence program, however, has substantial cost-sharing requirements. We just want to see that institutions have thought about what it would mean to have a visiting scholar at their institution. Many times what does cost-sharing mean? Provide them housing, office space, access to your libraries, email addresses, and things like that. Really integrate them into the campus community. The deadline for the Scholar in Residence program, we have about 50 of those that go out, that we receive annually. If you have somebody in mind, they would need to apply in their country, and then we would sort of match you again appropriately. If not, you would basically propose what you'd have in mind, and then we would send the call out to all of the countries that we work with, and then we would receive applications for your specific post. The deadline for that is always in and around October, usually October 15th. And other Fulbright programs you may have heard about, the U.S. student program funds through the dissertation level, and that's administered by our colleagues at the Institute of International Education. The Fulbright Teacher and Administrator program is a great program as well. It's much smaller in scope in that it's for K through 12 educators, and many times they're living in each other's houses and driving each other's cars and teaching in each other's classrooms. It's much more in-depth and therefore only really supported in about 6 to 7 countries. It's a lot of work. That's administered by our colleagues at AED, the Academy for Educational Development. And the Fulbright Hayes Awards are open to faculty. They're for group projects and summer seminars overseas in social sciences and humanities. And that actually makes sense. That's administered by the U.S. Department of Education. And that's all the information I have for you presentation-wise, but more is definitely available on our website. I'm happy to take any more questions you might have. And thank you for your time.